Hey guys, welcome to Rustic Lumber Store.
Hey everybody.
As you can see, this is a little bit of a different scene. We're in my office out in Ralston. For those who don't know, if you haven't heard by now, I own a media production company. So I shoot content for other businesses, kind of like I do here with Rustic Lumber Store, except I actually work here at the company. And so right now we are in my office because we're doing a bunch of running around today. And we got Zach here. We're here to talk to you guys about our new program. Zach came to me a couple weeks ago about the fact that he wanted to create a program for people who've never been involved in woodworking. They've never had that opportunity, or they may not have access to those type of resources to get involved in that. And because we can see that in the year 2023, the trades area department is kind of like, it's lower on the list. A lot of young adults, a lot of people, they don't want to go into that line of work, either because they have no knowledge of it, or they have so much knowledge of it, or what they perceive as is it's dangerous or hard or difficult or whatever the case is. And so it's kind of a craft that's it's kind of deteriorating, and we're getting it's getting kind of weird, knowing that like it's getting to the point where they're putting it back in schools to get people interested.
Yeah, I mean, what's really interesting about that is like the availability of workers are declining, but the demand that's needed is increasing.
Right.
And so, I mean, almost more than ever in the last 40 years, the demand for labor, skilled labor, is increasing, especially since like the COVID. But like the interest from younger youth is just not really there anymore. And I don't know what it is, if younger people just don't want to be as gritty, or it's
probably a combination of everything. I mean, technology is different, so there's a new demand there. Kids play outside less than they did. They've got more access to video games, TV, and social media and stuff like that. And so being outside, working with your hands, that type of thing, and they're taking it out of schools, or they had been for quite some time, is that it was becoming less and less of a thing. And so it probably it's probably a combination of it all. But like you said, the demand for it is like, we still kind of need that. Like guys don't go disappear. And so we wanted to, we were talking about something a little bit more serious than just like your average, like, oh man, we want to create a program. But Zach was, we live in Omaha and Louisville, and Zach was talking about the fact that he realizes and recognizes that in the Black community, there isn't a lot of union workers or help me. I literally just been saying
skilled trades.
Skilled trade. There you go. Trade worker. I was like, I've been saying it the whole time. There wasn't a lot of trade workers that it wasn't like a thing that was highlighted and talked about. And if anyone here has tuned into my podcast, it's called Strength in Words, a podcast about mental health and the Black experience. That's something that we talk about on that podcast, is that there's a lack of education, lack of opportunity in a lot of these more inner city like situations and scenarios, and people don't have I grew up off of Ames for a good portion of my life, and I can tell you right now, I don't know a single kid that was interested in woodworking, or that wasn't interested, and if they were interested in playing outside, it was sports. That's kind of what we did. And I mean, even as a young kid, I didn't care about the trades. I didn't care about being a construction worker or working with wood or and I went to school out in Millard, and we didn't really have any programs out there. And I know that there aren't that many programs in the OPS district. At least when I was growing up, there wasn't for those type of like hands-on activities. And it's so funny. Zach just listened to all the episodes of the podcast within the last couple days here, and he was like, hey, I didn't realize that this is kind of the same page we were already on. And so it's been really, he and I have been talking about it quite a bit now, to have a really good idea of, he came up with the idea to reach out to that community, to people, not just the black community, but the community of just the kids who are in the inner city, or people, not even just kids, who just in general don't have access to those opportunities, those tools, those ideas, just anything like that.
Yeah. I mean, so I grew up in smaller towns, and, especially here in the Midwest, smaller towns, it's going to be all white people pretty much, and they're always involved in trades or agriculture or something like that. So I always grew up with our schools always having trade programs, and, people are a lot of blue collar type work, and that's not an uncommon thing in smaller towns, because that's what a majority of people do, is that blue collar type work. So it's something that I guess I would say I take for granted as being normal. Like, it's not uncommon where you would hear, other classmates or other people saying that, they like to be a mechanic, or they like to do woodworking or that type of stuff. That's just the norm. And obviously growing up in small towns, we only live 20 minutes away from Omaha. So it's not like I live way out west where I've never even seen the city. I grew up where I'm always in Omaha for business and, getting materials and stuff. But I never grew up in like real city community. And that was something, you kind of, I wouldn't say that you necessarily enlightened me on it, but just through time in the last 2 years, growing our social media presence and stuff like that. And that's the big thing. Social media obviously opens up the opportunities with the rest of the world to see what everyone else is doing, And in social media, we're marketing heavily for other woodworkers and stuff. And that was something I brought up to you in the last couple of weeks is, in the trade stuff, especially on woodworking, you really don't see a whole lot of, black people doing this stuff. Yeah. And it's very few. And as when you do, it's kind of like, it shouldn't be something that it is, but subconsciously you're like, oh, look at that. That's a black guy doing woodworking on Instagram.
It's 100% a subconscious thing. Like, plenty of times I'll go, oh, neat, there's a black guy who's making cutting boards. Or because it's something I don't see. I mean, we've seen it as in media. Like, when growing up, there weren't a bunch of like black people on in certain movies or TV shows, where then there's more and more now, and as time went on. But it was something like when you saw like cartoons and there was a black character, you're like, oh, look, like it shouldn't be a thing that you're like, oh, look, but subconsciously, you're kind of like, it sticks out.
Yeah, but then you look at history, 50 to 150 years ago, that's black people were skilled trade people, that's what they did. A majority of people 50 to 150 years ago were all blue collar. Very few people, were white collar like nowadays. But
if you guys don't know, Zach's a big history buff.
Yeah.
He knows quite a bit about history. We had a conversation one day. I was shocked. I said, how's he know so much about black history?
Yeah,
he knew more than I. He was out here we were just talking about it in the shop. I was like, yo, I'm highly impressed. He knows stuff that they didn't teach in school at all.
Yeah, well, people are watching other stuff. I've always been like watching History Channel and things like that. And I always find it intriguing because, and really it kind of, from what I understand, it all started about roughly 80 to 100 years ago, where that stuff kind of was suppressed, It wasn't promoted as much as it used to be. And then nowadays, it's just not the norm anymore. But on the flip side, there is more than ever before a demand of skilled workers. And when there's not many opportunities in like black communities or whatever, that's a great option. Obviously, I never grew up in black communities, so I can't say on a personal opinion on it. So I kind of just look from the outside in, and then essentially, kind of talk to you about it. What are the troubles or issues? And people need to realize that there's good opportunities out there. So I feel like a lot of times nowadays people think there's two ends of the spectrum, like the high level, like you got to go to college and, you know, become a doctor and make your family proud. We've never done anything like that. Or people stay at the very bottom.
Right.
But there's a lot of opportunity in the middle. And skilled trades more than ever before are getting paid more than ever before because there's a demand with a lack of people doing it. And so
there's a guy out in Lincoln, and we'll be reaching out to him. I think he owns a steelworking company, and I think if you work for him for 4 years, he'll pay for you to go to trade school be a steel worker or a pipe worker, whatever the case is. And I think he's had the program for 15, 20 years, something like that.
Yeah.
And he was talking with a principal at a school, and he said there's not been a single person who's taken him up on it.
And that's in, you know, any race.
And that's anybody. Yeah, that's in any ethnicity, any race, out of 15 plus years he's had that program available. No one has taken him up on it.
Yep.
Which is crazy, right? Like you would think that someone who works for him for 4 years or whatever the case is, somebody would take him up on. Not a single one.
Yeah.
And hearing that, and I heard this a couple months ago, back in like November or December, and hearing that ignited a spark to say, like, that's something that we really need. And I went to a meeting out in Papillion here, and that was something that they were talking about there, was that there's a high demand of trades workers that need to be involved. And I think with it not being talked about heavily in like North Omaha and things like that, it's something that it's a big opportunity. It's a big opportunity to, one, teach people that, hey, like here's a skill that you're gonna need. People are gonna need forever. And short of getting injured, which I mean that can be on any job, you will always, or usually in a lot of cases, have some level of employment. Yeah. One way or the other.
That's right.
And it's whether it's with a union or with a company, one way or the other, you're gonna need it, or they're gonna have a job for you. And then two, it's something that people who don't have those opportunities, or people who don't even know where to begin, that's a place that they can start.
Yep.
And being able to create a program like this to help those kids who've never thought about it, or young adults who've never thought about it, or someone who with a difficult past and who just needs like a good reset and they don't know what to do in life, or they don't have any idea. We wanted to create an opportunity where we worked with someone and we pick a project. I mean, we've got projects down at the shop all the time, one way or the other, whether it's a table or working on some of the timber frames that we do.
Yep.
And we want to be able to give someone an opportunity to work with their hands and highlight something that they can help make with their bare hands. Like,
yep.
There's a good feeling. Y'all saw me make that cutting board. And even though came out a little messed up, that was really dope, and I use it, and it was cool to be able to have something that I made in my house that I use.
Yep.
And there's a lot of people. If anybody has ever heard of out here, I work with boxers with the blue collar boxing event, and a lot of these guys 90% of them are union workers, and I did a video that highlighted and talked to them about the things that they do for this city and for people in general. And essentially one of the big things is that your contractors, your concrete guys, your steel workers, your pipe guys, these people build the city you live in. They build the houses you live in, they build your plumbing, all of that. And without them, you would not be able to function in a clean, decent society. And it's something that we overlook and take for granted when we're not seeing it and dealing with it every single day. And in fact, it's actually annoying, like, oh, construction.
Yeah, right.
But it's really important that we take the time out of our day to help people like that, and to thank people like that. And if we can help people find a new purpose in life or find a purpose in general, I think that's a really dope thing to do. And
and I mean, and something else too is, so this isn't like necessarily a generalization as whole as a country. I mean, we're in the Midwest, in Nebraska. I mean, down south, it might be a little different because obviously there's more black people that live down there. So obviously there's gonna be a lot more people down there doing the skill. But this is our perspective here in Nebraska. And I mean, essentially, unless you're like in Omaha or Lincoln, And even at that, if you're not in the right parts of Omaha, Lincoln, you're not seeing too many black people around. You know what I mean? It's very, I wouldn't say necessarily confined because it's
not segregated, but it's definitely like it's broken up. It's broken up. You've got your north part of town where black people are. You've got out west where it's more white, and you've got South O where it's where it's a Latino community. Like it's not segregated, but I mean, you're gonna find a higher influx depending on what part of town you're in.
And I'm sure you go down south, something like Atlanta, everyone
completely different story. Yeah, just completely different story out in Atlanta, Texas.
So this isn't like a generalization as a country as a whole, but we see it here, but it's not a generalization. But at the same time, I mean, like we mentioned, just from observation through Instagram, I mean, you'll go on Instagram and find thousands of woodworkers that are white dudes that do this. And I mean, I don't know if it's just a natural, that's just what we do. And if,
make sure we got 5 minutes left. He's like, I don't know if that's just what we do.
So I don't know. I mean, I guess this would be a perspective on you. I don't know if like the black culture doesn't, glorify or like if everyone I don't know if this is the wrong thing, but like people want to be like a baller or hit something big, they overlook. They're like, no, I want to become like something high end.
High end. Yeah. We talk about that on the podcast. Is that it's something that I don't even know if that episode's up yet, but it's something that they have people in that's glorified in black culture and black community is that. They're big, massive achievements, athletes, ballers, rappers, like just big, giant aspirations that most people across the board don't ever hit. And a lot of people talk about, I want to make 6 figures. I want to be somebody, I want to make a lot of money to be able to provide for a family or whatever the case is. And something like trades is overlooked.
Yeah.
It's something that's just, they miss it. Maybe it's due to lack of education. We talk about the education system a lot on our podcast, and maybe it's just a lack of opportunity. And so we at Rustic Lumber Store and Timber Ridge Log Homes want to provide that education and those opportunities for people who wouldn't normally have access to.
And talking about opportunity, like this is the best time ever to get, because there's been no better time for opportunity than now, because there's just such a demand. You know what I mean? And it's a good time to get into this type of work, and it doesn't have to be woodworking. Anything that is a productive type trade, it's something to get into, and too many people, and it doesn't matter what ethnicity or race you are. I mean, if you see a group of Hispanics doing construction on a house, no one's going to drive by and even think twice. Or even white people, they drive by, no one's going to think twice. Now, like I said, maybe down south it's different, but at least here in the Midwest, if I drove by and seen like a group of black guys working on a house, I'd be like,
that would stick out.
I'd be like,
it'd stick out to me.
I'm like, I didn't. Wow, that's cool.
I was like, well, that's interesting.
But it shouldn't be that way.
It shouldn't. No, it shouldn't.
And there's a demand in the community too. I mean, someone has to like work on people's homes or fix things up, or and entrepreneurship too. Like, entrepreneurship shouldn't only be at the level of like professional white collar jobs neither.
Right.
Like when people think of like, I want to own a business or something, it shouldn't only be like, I want to own a business where you're like in finances or, which that's great, but that shouldn't be like the only aspirations. I mean, there's a lot of opportunities elsewhere, and it's just fun. I think a lot of people just don't realize it's an enjoyable thing to do,
Yeah.
What's nice with you is I can have these like open discussions without having to like feel like, am I saying something? I mean, as I don't have, first time we ever met, first time you came down to the shop when we were, posting about this job for media production, like it didn't even, I mean, obviously when you come, I'm like, oh, he's a black guy, but it wasn't like where I'm like,
it's just a standard. It's a standard observation.
Yeah,
like, okay.
But it wasn't any more than that. But what intrigued me with you was, I brought you down, showed you the shop, showed you which a lot has changed since then.
Right.
But how the excitement you had, like I could tell. I'm like, man, this dude's like way, because there's a few other people I interviewed, and they're just like, yeah, like sure, I can do something for you, but like you got pumped So it was really exciting. And then throughout the last 2 years, you know, we grew a trust and friendship together. So what's nice is I'm able to discuss these things that, you know, if it was a black person I didn't know on a personal level, I wouldn't know if I'm like hitting a touchy subject or something.
And I'm saying on top of that, like, this is stuff I find interesting. I mean, like, I run a whole podcast talking about this type of stuff. And it's always interesting to hear different perspectives, different experiences. I mean, like, everybody at the shop has always been, like, nobody's ever made me feel like, oh, that's the black guy of the group. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's never been one of those things. Like, people were people. Everybody at the shop is just people. And everybody at the shop comes from different backgrounds. Yeah. Like, nobody discriminates against anyone's background. It's based off of the character themselves. And that's always something that has been, I've always respected about everyone at the shop. And the fact that that's really all it's been is just like, and being able to have these open dialogues is, I always think they're healthy. Yeah. Right? I always think that they're a healthy thing, because how else does anybody learn anything? And, you know, on the flip, because just something I kind of didn't even think of till now is there's a possibility that nowadays that the community, maybe the black community, isn't so much getting into this, because like this dialogue we're having right now, this was something I brought up to you, you know, a couple weeks ago, is nowadays, you know, obviously, like, we're not going to get into the whole racism thing. Like, that's like, that's the whole, but that's not the topic. What the topic is, something I was just now thinking of, is another reason might possibly be as less, I would say, you know, white people are being less racist nowadays, but they don't know what level of discussion they're allowed to talk about. And because of that, the discussion we're making right now, why are black people not, at least in our area of the Midwest, not in the trades, and people just, like, you know, I don't know if I should even, let's just not even talk about it. Yeah. And that might even be a part of the root of the problem too, is it's just, nobody wants to talk about it. It don't have to be talked about like some level of a political discussion or anything. It just is a literal observation. And that might be part of the thing too, is people just aren't bringing up like again, here in the Midwest, can't say the same thing for somebody out in Georgia, but it's a different perspective. Like, I don't know too many, like I said, construction workers in that field. Like, I think I know two. I think both of them are my cousins. Both of them are my cousins, but that's it. And of course, I grew up on every side of town. Yeah. Just about. There was not a place in town I didn't know. I grew up out in Millard. I grew up in North. I grew up somewhere, you know, I was in South O from time to time. Things like that. Like, it didn't matter where I was. It was just things that the very few times I did run into tradesmen that were black, it was always something that stuck out. Mm-hmm. I remember one time I heard somebody fluent in Spanish. Just heard Spanish coming out, and all of a sudden out popped this black guy. I was like, well, that was unexpected. Yeah. And he was a construction worker, and he was just working with but the one, the one, and then he worked with a Latino group or company or whatever the case is, and I think he's just a contractor or whichever the case. But it's not a common thing that I experience, and it's not a common thing that we see both in town and often on social media. And we run a woodworking community. Yeah, we run a woodworking company and page and things like that. So when we do see them, it sticks out. And even though it shouldn't, it does. It does, and which tells me something. It tells me that if it sticks out that much to us, that means that there must be something that we don't see very commonly. Yeah. And I mean, really, that's, you know, how, and like I said, and a root of that might just be because before, you know, I've thought about this for quite a while. Right. But like I said, you know, as a white guy trying to bring this up to, you know, black guy, it's a touchy. You got to find the right person to be comfortable with to talk about it, because some people might possibly take offense to it, you know, or how you present it. And so that I like now talking and thinking about it could easily be part of the root problem too, is people just don't have that discussion. So then everything just stays the way it is, you know? Right. And the more people discuss about it, but at the same time, because even right now, I wouldn't say it feels weird, but just feel like, I wouldn't say unnecessary neither, but just like that it's to a point where we even today in 2023 have to talk about black white stuff, you know, like I don't want this whole thing to be about
black people,
and white people, and yeah, it's never been like, and of course that's neither one of us really like. It's not something that we have in our day to day that we think in this like that's black, that's white. But it's stuff that we're in a weird element right now. We're in a weird atmosphere with how things are in society, and so we see essentially when it comes down to it at the end of the day. You and I both recognize that there is a lack of a particular group of people, right, in a particular field. So in this situation, we see that there's a lack of black tradesmen, right,
yep.
tradeswomen, and we think that that's odd. We think that's an odd thing that we're like, why? And so we're looking at exploring why that is and how we can help it, because at the end of the day, there needs to be more tradesmen.
Yep.
We need to have more tradespeople out there, and we are losing a lot. We don't, as somebody's retiring every day.
Yeah.
And so there is such a high demand that if one of the reasons why that we don't see that many is because of lack of opportunity, then we want to give that opportunity. So that's what the point of this episode was, is to really give you guys the insight and understanding behind our new program.
Yep. And as this progresses, and like I said, we don't know exactly 100% how it's going to be structured. It's going to evolve as time goes on. And like we mentioned, the biggest thing that brought this attention to us is just what we observed through social media. So what would be great is, as this evolves, which I have several accounts and people that I follow on social media that are black entrepreneurs in the woodworking industry. And I'm sure, because there's other industries, because since we're a woodworking business, I follow predominantly woodworking stuff, but I know there would be other black entrepreneurs in social media that are doing other stuff like welding and other trades. But as this goes on, any of them are watching this and agree essentially what we're saying, we would love to collaborate with other people as time goes on as well.
Yeah.
To try to make this grow into something more,
Absolutely. That is something we would love to be able to do, is that anybody who sees a need in their community or their industry and they want to collaborate to be able to create opportunities for people who wouldn't normally have that opportunity or don't have that opportunity, let us know.
Yep.
Reach out to us, and we'll see what we can do to create opportunities for everybody. That's the big thing, is that as we enter this new year, and as our kids grow older, we want to make sure that we're not just setting our kids up for success, but we want to set up our future. Like the kids of this generation, the young adults, the people of this generation is our future.
Yep.
And believe me, I want to be able to I want to be able to know somebody. And be like, I want to be able to give somebody opportunity and say, like, a kid or a young person who said, like, I didn't know I was good at this. I didn't know, because there's no better feeling than finding out that you're good at something that you didn't know you could be good at.
Yep.
It's something that you never thought of that you could be good at. I always tell people all the time, I don't have an artistic bone in my body. I can't color inside the lines. That's real. I literally can't color inside the lines. I'm awful at color. I can't draw, can't color, can't do anything. But my girlfriend points out, and a lot of people point out to me, they're like, your art is your craft.
Yep.
And so in seeing that and hearing that, and I understand that, is that art manifests its way in different forms, and being able to create and watching, young kids take that initiative to create is outstanding. And so we at Rustic Lumber Store, at Churlish Media, want to be able to create opportunities for young people to create, because they will be able to help create a better future for everybody. So thanks, guys, for watching. Leave comments below. Reach out to us if you want. And we'll see you guys out there.
Yep. Thank you, everyone.